Rather lads, welcome back to Kossi's Arsenal podcast. My name is Kossi. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are in all parts of the world. Welcome back to the channel. Welcome back to a brand new video. Premier League football is back. Arsenal are back in action this weekend. We take on Brentford at the GTEC Community Stadium. It's a very, very difficult environment to travel to. It's a very difficult stadium to go to. Last campaign, when we went there, we suffered a 2-0 defeat at the beginning of the season. Yes, we did have a couple of problems, but you have to consider that Brentford were just promoted from the championship. So Arsenal were expected to win that game at least 2-0, at least 3-1. We lost the game hands down, very, very convincingly. Now, this is our second time playing Brentford ever since they were promoted at the GTEC Stadium. This is the second season, and this is our second time visiting their home. Now, it's a very difficult opponent. We're going to be looking at how to beat them, their strength, their weaknesses, how they set up, and their key players, and also the current form. But one thing I will give you is that I cannot give any guarantees that Arsenal will go to the GTEC Stadium and pick up 3 points. I think it's another reality test. You remember when I told you that our season begins with Manchester United and FC Zurich? The season has already begun, and this is reality. This is Arsenal now facing real opponents. Brentford is one of them. They've already picked up interesting points this campaign against Manchester United. 4-0, 5-2 against Leeds United. Look, they're amazing. They're absolutely amazing. They've only lost one game this campaign. That was against Fulham. And Thomas Frank, for me, is one of the biggest tacticians in the game in the Premier League. So we're going to be diving into all that. Hit the like button for me. And in the comment section, name for me 3 players you are most concerned about in the Brentford squad. 3 players you're most concerned about in the Brentford squad. Of course, Ivan Toney should be among them. Which ones are the other 2? Now, let's dive into it. Let's start off with the current form. This season, there are some of the clubs that are really performing very well. They're already in the top 10, and you want, I think, if you're a Brentford fan, that is what you're looking for this season. You want your team to be finishing in the top 10. I mean, there are a few suggestions of the second season syndrome, which comes with the burnout, fatigue, and being found out. But with Thomas Frank, I don't think there are any signs of the second season syndrome. The only problem they will face, in my opinion, is having a small squad, and games are really going to be coming in thick and fast. When it comes to tactics, when it comes to being found out, when it comes to playing like they are suffering from burnout and also fatigued, they don't look like such a side. They look fresh, they look energetic, they look motivated, and they're very, very good, especially at what they're trying to do. So in terms of being on form, 6 games in, they have only lost 1 game. They've already picked up some big results, like I said, against Man United and Leeds United, with heavy score lines: 4-0 against United and 5-2 against Leeds United. So that shows you the kind of opponent we are going to be facing. Scores a lot of goals. They do concede as well. We'll talk about their weaknesses. They do concede as well, but they're a team that really is aggressive. They work hard on the ball and even off the ball. So in terms of their key players, then let's look at who are Arsenal really going to be facing, and what are some of the key parts of this team. Number 1 is their goalkeeper, David Raya. He's one of the goalkeepers in the Premier League that are having a very good save percentage, 74%. That is a goal saving percentage. That means that he's one of the goalkeepers that are really doing all right in terms of stopping shots when they're directed to him. But also, Thomas Frank has used David Raya, the Spaniard, as a build-up goalkeeper. Now, this is the trend in football. This is the trend in the Premier League. Ramsdale, Ederson, Alisson, Mendy, Kepa Arrizabalaga, and the rest of the other goalkeepers. If you cannot play with the ball at your feet, your position as a goalkeeper is under threat. David Raya is one of the goalkeepers that are averaging very accurate long balls to find the likes of Rico Henry and the likes of Aaron Hickey, but also very confident as a goalkeeper to play out from the back. When the likes of Christian Nogard and Jensen drop deeper to pick up the ball, he's a very, very confident goalkeeper in terms of passing the ball to them. So he's one of the key players, and he's one of the very deadly weapons that we are going to be facing at the GTEC Stadium this weekend. Now, the other two players that I think are very, very crucial to them is Aaron Hickey and Rico Henry. Now, playing a 4-3-3, they're so similar to Manchester City, and they're very, very similar to those modern sides. They play high up the pitch, they press high up the pitch, and when they're in terms of attacking, their fullbacks play a very, very crucial role. So Rico Henry and Aaron Hickey. Aaron Hickey is a very nice and very good acquisition from the Italian Serie A. Arsenal were linked with Aaron Hickey, but he ended up signing for Brentford. He's another player that we are really going to face, and we are really going to have a long evening, because what Thomas Frank has done, he uses his fullbacks to stretch the pitch as much and wide as possible, and then he also uses them to create overloads in the wider areas. So that means Ben White and Alexander Zinchenko have to be on top of their game throughout the 90 minutes. In midfield, one of their key men is Christian Nogard. Is very, very good when it comes to build up play, dropping into deeper areas, picking up that ball, and advancing it. Of course, you have the likes of Matthias Jansen as well, who has occupied the Christian Eriksen role, distributing the ball, switching from side to side. But also you have Matthias Jansen as your creative piece in that game. So we have to be very wary of Matthias Jansen and Christian Nogard as well. But for me, when it comes to key players and it comes to Brentford, it is these three up top that we have to mind a lot. Number one is Johan Wissa. He's playing as a Raumdeuter, kind of a Thomas Muller role at Bayern Munich. He's not particularly anywhere. He's everywhere when it comes to that forward line. He's almost, for me, we talk about Alexander Mitrovic getting a weekly goal. Another player that literally gets a weekly goal and goes unnoticed is Johan Wissa. So we have to look at Johan Wissa and track his movements. You have Ivan Toney as well, is acting as a target man, but also another clinical, very, very clinical striker for them. He has scored a hat-trick in the last game against Leeds United. And then Brian Mbeumo, the pace that he has running in behind is very energetic, and the combination between him and Ivan Toney is absolutely one of the best in the Premier League. So those are the key players they have in the team. We're gonna try to look at the tactics and how Thomas Frank uses these players as deadly weapons. But for me, the focus should be on Johan Wissa, Ivan Toney, Brian Mbeumo, Aaron Hickey, and Rico Henry. Those are the 5 players that I think Arsenal should be focusing on to stop if you're going to be beating Brentford this weekend. So then, if they have so many dangerous players and key players, how do they set up? I've already told you. They set up in a 4-3-3 formation. Contrary to last campaign, Thomas Frank has graduated his side from a 3-5-2 formation to a 4-3-3 formation. I think if you want to survive and thrive in the Premier League, there are 2 things you have to do. One, you need to stop overthinking about detail. So you need to stop being meticulous, and then you need to stop being behind the ball all the time. Eventually you get found out. You need to play football. You need to take the football to your opponents. Don't get me wrong, Burnley really played played a good spell in the Premier League, but when you're found out, it really doesn't look very, very good. And that's why I think Thomas Frank is one of the best managers in the Premier League currently. He has decided that he's going to go away from the timid football to a more pragmatic style. And I think it's really, really working out very well for them. That is why clubs, instead of finding them out, clubs are actually finding it difficult to understand Brentford and how they have revolutionized their style of play. So they play a 4-3-3, and their major focus and emphasis is playing out from the back. So they're a possession-based team. They detest losing the ball. They don't want to lose the ball, and that is why they play out from the back. David Raya is one of the key players in doing that. Their goalkeeper. They always start their attacks with their goalkeepers. Of course, you have the likes of Aaron Hickey and and Rico Henry left and right, spreading the pitch and stretching the pitch as much as possible. So David Raya has options. When he starts when he starts off, he has options out wide to his fullbacks, Rico Henry and Aaron Hickey. But then he also has options with the arriving Christian Nogard and the likes of Potas Janssen as well, spreading out in the back. So they're not an easy side to stop, but one way to beat them there is pressing high up the pitch. It's one of the tactics they use. We'll talk about it. But if you want to beat Brentford, because this video is all about how to beat Brentford, you have to be able to press high up the pitch, because that is how you beat any team that tries to build out from the back. That is how they beat Manchester United, because under Erik ten Hag, Man United will always look to build out from the back. David De Gea and the likes of Maguire and the likes of Varane, they have to be involved in play, in build up. So if you want to beat them, what you do is you force the errors in the final third. You force those errors in their own third. I think that is what Thomas Frank does best when it comes to when he's playing these possession-based teams. Leeds United, Manchester United, he's done it very well, and that is how they play as well. Their fullbacks really stretch the pitch as much as possible, so it is not going to be an easy encounter against Brentford, because when you look at how when you look at how the likes of Johan Wissa, Ivan Toney and Brian Mbeumo set up, they set up narrowly, right? So they're literally in a narrow shape. That means they will compress our fullbacks and our centre backs into a narrow shape. But as they compress in a narrow shape, they allow lots of space to run into, lots of space in behind for their fullbacks, the likes of Aaron Hickey on the right side and also Rico Henry. So they use a lot of width for their fullbacks because they play in kind of a narrow shape. I think Mikel Arteta will look at that as well. Another strength of theirs and another way of play is long passes. They are really precise. Now, in the Premier League this season, they are 5th when it comes to accurate long passes. And I'm not talking about passes from goalkeeper to the final third. I'm talking about passes into the channels, but long passes into the channels. The likes of Christian Eriksen did that very well last campaign. But without Christian Eriksen, the job has dropped onto the shoulders of Christian Nogard, Janet, and Jensen. So they look to exploit defenses, especially defenses that play a high line. If you're playing a high line against Brentford, you're going to suffer because they always play that long ball to find Brian Mbeumo. They always play that long ball to find Johan Wissa, and of course Ivan Toney as well. However much we underrate his ability to run in behind, he's another player that has the pace. He's another player that has a lot of pace on his game. So they can use him as a target man, but then they can also use him as a board to allow Brian Mbeumo and their fullbacks to spin in behind. So long balls is another way they play, pressing high up the pitch. I've talked about that. So Arsenal is a possession-based team. We always love to build out from the back. We always have to be on the ball all the time, and we always to be that team. We always look out to be that team that is always in possession. Brentford are going to try to press us high up the pitch, and when they force the errors, it doesn't look very good because they have. It looks like for me they have the quality to punish. Look at that front three. Mbeumo scored in their recent game against Leeds. Ivan Toney scored in their recent game against Leeds, a hat-trick, and Johan Wissa as well scored in that game. 5 goals to 2, and all of them was scored by the front three. What that shows you, and the communication you get from that, is they have the quality to punish when they see a mistake. When you drop the ball, when they exploit your defense, just like Manchester United did, they have the quality to punish. So that is something that we have to think about. I think another thing that they always do a lot of the time is using Ivan Toney as a target man, as a board. Now, I think one of the teams that uses a target man, no longer in the Premier League, that was Burnley, Chris Wood, and I think West Ham as well, Mikel Antonio. So you have to stop them from finding Ivan Toney, because what Ivan Toney has is that quality forward, that quality center forward that we allow the team play around him. He's going to bring the rest of the team into the game. As long as he has the ball onto his feet, he's going to force fouls near the penalty area. He's going to allow, is going to allow them advance high up the pitch, because when he gets the ball, he's going to hold it, wait for the likes of Matthias Jensen, wait for the likes of Christian Nogard, and when they arrive high up the pitch, it's going to be a big problem. Now, one of the problems I've seen with Arsenal this season is we don't want to be under pressure. We don't want to be, we don't want the ball facing our direction. We are always better, we are always comfortable when the ball is, moving in the trajectory of the opposite direction, in the direction of the opponent. Brentford in this game will have their moments, they'll have their chances, they do create chances, and they put them away. So let's look at the key strength of this side. Number one is the counter-attacks. Yes, they do play a lot on the ball, but they're also happy. Thomas Frank is one of those tacticians that are very happy to sit back when they realize that they cannot match you man-to-man, toe-to-toe in terms of possession. They're happy to sit back and spin in behind. I've talked about the pace of Brian Mbeumo and what he brings to the table. I've talked about the use of their fullbacks, that is Aaron Heike and Rico Henry, and I've also talked about the Raumdeuter in Johan Wissa, and the long balls played by Matt Raya, David Raya, not Matt Raya. The long balls from David Raya, Christian Nogan, and Jensen. So counterattacks is one of the ways to split defenses, and of course they're always going to have the quality to play that long ball in behind your defense. Arsenal do have problems when it comes to playing a high line. We saw it with Manchester United. Christian Eriksen and Bruno Fernandes cut us apart. So we cannot allow again another team in Brentford to exploit that weakness. So that is one of their strengths, counterattacks. The other is clinical. They're so clinical. Now, if you look at the amount of chances they had against Manchester United in the 4-0 defeat, how many chances did they have? They barely created chances, but they had goal-scoring opportunities. They had 4 clear goal-scoring opportunities, and guess what? They took all of them. In the Leeds United game, they created around 7 chances, and they scored 5 of them. They're very clinical. Ivan Toney is a beast up top. I am really, really regretting why I signed him in my FPL and sold him. I'm an absolute mug. I should have left him in my FPL, but anyway, I'm gonna buy him again. So that is one of the other strength they have. They create chances and they put them away. Of course, they're very good at using their fullbacks, and drawing them into the game. The crosses, the runs in behind. That is something Arsenal should be thinking about, and also ball possession. They love being on the ball, and they have the quality to keep possession as well. But now they're not a side without weaknesses. They do have a couple of weaknesses, and we should build on these ones to beat them. Number one is they play a high line when they're in possession. That is something that you always look to exploit. With the speed of Martinelli, Saka, and Gabriel Jesus, and of course the intelligence from Partey, Odegaard, and Granit Xhaka, we should be looking at playing that that ball in behind for the likes of Martinelli to run, and the likes of Saka to run onto. Gabriel Jesus is another good runner. So if we can use the pace against Brentford, we will actually cause them a lot of problems. Of course, they do concede a lot of goals this season. They've only kept 1 clean sheet in 6 games. Now, I'm not really saying they should be keeping more clean sheets, but I'm trying to say here that they do concede goals. So if you're clinical enough, if you're good enough to exploit their defense, you will score lots of goals against them. And for me, they just lack enough quality. Now, this is quite being disrespectful, but when you compare them on paper with Arsenal, I think Arsenal are the better side. So, however much a team has a very good tactician, however much a team has a very good manager, the quality is always going to betray them. And I think Brentford is one of those teams that have everything when it comes to a tactician, but the quality of the team, the quality of the squad is always going to let them down. So for me, those are their weaknesses. They don't have so many weaknesses, especially this campaign. They concede a lot of goals, they play high line, and they lack enough quality to sustain a 4-3-3. So the big question then, lads, is how do we beat Brentford? In my opinion, first and foremost, you need to work harder than them. They are a very, very hard-working side. If you look at their midfield, Christian Nogard, Jensen, and De Silva, they will always try to win the ball back as quickly as they can, and also in advanced areas. If you allow them win the ball in your final third, you're going to be destroyed. Eric Ten Hag said this about Arsenal before he played us. They're so good on the ball. You cannot allow them play. If you allow them play, you're going to create problems for yourself. That is the same statement I'm going to make with Brentford. You cannot allow them play. And of course, the other way to beat them is spinning in behind Saka, Martinelli, Alexander Zinchenko, and Gabriel Jesus. Their speed should be enough to cut holes into that back line of Ben Mee and Potence Jansson. But they're not a very easy side. We'll talk more about them in the preview. We'll talk about how exactly they've done against Arsenal in the past, the record they have against us, and how I feel about this game. But for now, that is how we beat Brentford, and I'll see you very, very soon.